one reason that I see, or how I see this turn up sometimes, is the business owner that isn't thinking too far ahead or far enough ahead, and they're chasing revenue. Oh, everybody's asking for this, so I'm going to go create this offer, and because people want it, and I'm going to sell this offer. And then before they know it, right, that becomes the business versus what they really want their business to be, or that becomes a bigger percentage of the business than they were prepared for. But I've seen a lot of people where it's just like, well, somebody hired me to do this and I said yes. And then that led to this person who wanted me to do this and that said yes. And pretty soon I'm 5 miles away from the business I really wanted to have. Are you feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or uncertain about how to grow your business without sacrificing what really matters most? Welcome to The Business You Really Want, the show for women ready to build a sustainable, fully aligned business. Aligned with what, you ask? You, your values, your life. Seriously, it is possible. I'm Tonya Kubo, and along with business advisor extraordinaire Gwen Bortner, we're here to show you how. You've built a successful business. On paper, it looks great. Awesome. People want to be you. They want to write songs about you. But if you're honest, at least with yourself, and you think about it long and hard, it may not actually be the business you want anymore. If you're feeling restless, resentful, or boxed in by what you've created, this time of year, you're probably not alone. A lot of people are reevaluating how they got to where they're at and whether they actually want to be there. So today, Gwen and I are going to talk about how you can recognize misalignment in your business, why it happens, and how to shift without burning down everything that you've built. So Gwen, I want to kick this off with you because I think when it comes to successful business owners who are trapped in their own companies, you probably have a list of examples a mile long.
It's interesting because yes and no, right? Because of a lot of the people I work with, they kind of come in thinking that, and then often it's a small change that actually makes a big difference. Not always. So, sometimes there's bigger changes that go with that. But I think that the issue that we have with this is that doing anything different than what is already, achieved, however we're defining success, right? If we make the change, then somehow that's admitting a failure.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's not necessarily a failure. It was just success for a different time than where we are now. And it's one of the things that because we've talked about it a lot, that I talk about often with my clients is, what is the season that you're in? And of course, in this case, I'm not actually talking about, changes in weather kind of season, but what is the season of your life? What's going on right now? And often that's where we're starting to feel that discontent. And it's easy to see when it's very obvious external things that have changed in your life. But there can also be really subtle internal things that have changed in your life that change the season. And sometimes it's because you've had the success that you've had that the season has now changed. And what once felt successful isn't giving you the same joy, the excitement, the whatever, and you're feeling trapped because it's like, but if I stop doing this, then what, right? Mm-hmm. Am I still successful? What does that look like? And so I think there's a lot of ways that we can end up there. And I think a lot of it is because we're just keeping on, right? We're just kind of keep on keeping on. And that's what's going on. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, how did I get here? Right? I started down a path and I kept walking on the path, and I was walking on the path and there was a lot going on, and I was walking on the path, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, where am I?
Mm-hmm.
Because we've just walked down the path. We just kept doing the thing because often we're good at doing that. That's why we have our own business, because we know how to keep doing the thing.
Yeah. Well, and what I like about what you said is it's about the season. And I mean, ultimately, it's all about alignment. And this is something you talk a lot about, right? Like when you do, for instance, like the 5-3-1 goal setting sessions. I know you have one coming up next week. You do that with all your clients. And, we did one live and in real time here with me. That was fun in quotes, but very useful. It's uncomfortable, but useful, right? But one of the things that you make a point to do is bring in all of the different aspects of a business owner's life that affects their business. Like in my case, right? It's like kicking the can down the road to when I have one in high school, one in elementary school, one in college, one in high school, right? Like, and thinking like, okay, so what needs to be true then? Like what am I going to want to be doing? And even now with one in elementary school, one in high school, I had to come to terms in this last year that being the marketing department of one, where I do everything from strategy to writing emails to customer service to social media to this, to that, no longer fits in with the life that I have, right? I'm on the go too much. I can't get 6 hours of deep work in 5 days a week. And so one thing that I was thinking about as you were just speaking is, because it is really, really difficult to have that level of success, be making your income goals especially, and go, but this isn't how I want to spend my day, or this isn't what I want to be doing, or maybe even like, it's not that I can't do this, but I'm no longer the best person at this price point to be doing these things. It's a trap, right? Because you're like boxed in by your own success. If you're a good service provider, especially, or you have a good product, right? Everybody wants it. Like there's a line out the door of people who want what you got. And for you to have to look internally and go, but I want them to go line up at somebody else's door, or I would just like to close the door, pull down the shutters and pretend that nobody's home. That's not a good place to be. So I'm going to ask you, Gwen, if somebody is sitting there and they're thinking like, maybe like it's been a good year, maybe it's been an okay year, but like I can't do another year like this for some reason, right? I can't be this busy again. I can't work this many hours. I can't run my margins this tight. I can't skip paying myself, whatever they don't want to repeat going into the next year. What are some questions they can be asking themselves? Because this is something that you recently said, right? Like you have recognized that most business owners, especially the successful ones, they do not need more information. What they really need is to start asking or be asked better questions.
Right.
So what could they be asking themselves right now?
Well, so the first thing is this permanent or is this temporary?
Help me explain to me how I would know the difference, right? Because like as a mom of a teenager, it feels permanent right now.
Right. Well, and it is because it's most of the year. But if you are asking the question over summer, is this permanent or is this temporary? Your life, you and I are actually close enough friends and physically close enough to know. So I can actually talk about this for you. Your life is different in the summer than it is during the school year. There are positive things about it and there are negative things about it, right? And so part of it is like, has it just gone on long enough that it feels like it's always this way, or is it always this way? And will it feel like this way in a month or two from now? Right? Now we're projecting and we can't absolutely know what we're going to feel like a month or two from now. But we can often say, oh, yeah, in 2 months, these other things will be going on and maybe this isn't such a problem anymore. Right? So that's what I mean by permanent or temporary. Has this been going on for a long time? Is it something that's been either building up over time or eating at you, or is it something that just feels like, oh my gosh, I just really hate this? And it's like, is that today? Will you still say that tomorrow or the next day or next month or next week or, whenever? So the first question is it permanent or temporary? Because I think often as entrepreneurs, because it's part of our superpower, is we can switch really quickly. And sometimes I think we switch too quickly. Right? Because like, oh, this is really bothering me. I'm going to go do something else. And then we start doing something else. And it's like, oh, I kind of wish I was still doing this thing. Right? Now, one of the other questions is, can you reframe it? And what I mean by that is instead of it being the thing that was lighting you up because it was doing all the things, can it be the thing that you do so easily you can do it in a relaxed state? Okay? Because a lot of us, when we start our businesses, the things that we're doing in our business are the things that we're super passionate about, and we're excited to learn more things. And it's all of this energy around the newness and the curiosity and the learning. And depending on what we're doing, if we've done it long enough, there may not be that much to learn anymore. That excitement of the energy of the newness often will dissipate, kind of the nature of things, right? But if we are disappointed in it because it's not giving us that energy, one of the questions is, can we reframe it and say, no, this is now the thing that is super easy for me to do in the business. And instead, I'm going to put my curiosity energy into this other aspect of the business, right? But often it's hard for us to do that switch because it was always the place that we got all of our energy and our excitement and whatnot. And if it's not doing that, then it must be failing.
Right.
It's like, no, maybe it's not. Maybe we can reframe it and say, no. Now, it can also be, I really just hate this. I don't want to do this anymore. For whatever reason it can be. I mean, if you're continuing to be a human that's growing and developing, you really can grow past the thing. It's like, yeah, this just is not my thing anymore, right? And so part of the question to ask is, if not this, then what? Right? So if I'm not doing this, what would I be doing? What would I want to be doing? What could that look like ahead of time? Because I think that's the other thing, is that we just go after the next thing, which isn't necessarily the right thing.
Right.
Right? So if I'm not doing this, what could I be doing? What would I want to be doing? What would that look like? And in some cases, we really are talking about a pivot. It's like, oh, instead of doing it this way, I'm going to do this thing. Others, it is not a pivot. It is I'm shutting the door. I'm pulling down the screen, just like you said, and I'm going to go off and do this other thing that has nothing to do with what I was doing before. Right? But doing that in a mindset of curiosity and proactiveness as opposed to reactiveness. Right? Of, if not this, then what? The example that, you always call my entrepreneurial side quest was a great example. I had been doing things in project management, IT leadership, corporations, big things, most of my life until a point that I got laid off. And when I finally said, well, what do I want to do? I said, I'm going to go be a professional knitting instructor. I mean, it wasn't quite that linear, but it was relatively close to that. I mean, that was, I'm shutting down the curtains. I'm closing all the doors. I'm doing all the things. Now, once I was in there, not very long, it was like, oh, I still really like doing the business stuff. Let's just reopen. Let's start reopening these doors and dealing with some of those things. But it was a completely shut down. In this case, it wasn't a business. At that point, I was working for somebody else. But it was, I am completely going to go in a 100% different direction than where I have. It wouldn't have made sense to try and maintain that and that other business at the time. Right? So there are options, but the knowing if not this, then what? I think is another important questions. Those are three. You probably want to reflect. I could probably keep going on forever because you
you could. Well, it's so I think first what I want to say, because I love all these questions, especially the, is it permanent or is it temporary? Because I've seen a lot of people make permanent decisions in the face of temporary challenges. And I'm trying to think of one off the top. Well, I'll give you one off the top of my head, right? They want to shut down Facebook, right? They're leaving Facebook. They don't like some decision that Mark Zuckerberg made or whatever.
So the list goes on. Yeah.
Right. So they're shutting down Facebook, and now they're only on Blue Sky for business purposes, except that they never stop to think of whether they're how much business they were getting off of Facebook, number one. Their assumption, because everybody hates Facebook today or yesterday or whatever day we're talking about, that all their people left Facebook too, right? And because everybody's talking about Blue Sky, they're going to all be on Blue Sky. Then they go to Blue Sky and it's crickets. And it's crickets because it's a brand new social platform. People are still like trying to figure out what to do there. And then they have to make that decision of, do they go back and have to go, oopsie, my bad? Or, do they just say, nope, made my bed, I'm going to lie in it, and cut out a huge source of revenue, right? So that's an example of a semi-permanent decision made off of temporary circumstances. So I think that's a really important question to be always asking. Anytime you find yourself like in discontent with your business, in frustration, is like, is this temporary? Is this permanent? Always a great clarifying question. I think also, we have kind of in a number of ways talked about a lot of different signs that you're operating out of misalignment. Either there's not alignment between your values and your business, or maybe the life you want to be living and what your business requires of you right now, or at least what you think your business requires of you right now.
Yep.
And what I heard is, you're dreading the work. You aren't excited anymore. You're not excited by the clients, or you're not, you pointed out like not excited by the work that used to excite you, used to light you up. There's no excitement on that. And you didn't really say this, but kind of under the surface, sometimes it's just, there's just too much reliance on you. Like everything is fine, but you're starting to feel like you're the end all be all. And if I take a day off, it's all a house of cards that comes crumbling down. And that people love to blame their people for that, right? It's like, I have a bad team. I don't have good workers, da, 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 da. But it always is, no, that's a misalignment. Because if you are hungry for a day off that you don't feel like you can afford to take, that means you built a business that doesn't align with your values. So I think it's just important to kind of call those out specifically for people who are listening in the car and they're not jotting down notes and they don't want to connect the dots. Now, I want to kind of turn it back to you and talk about why this happens. So I will say one reason that I see, or how I see this turn up sometimes, is the business owner that isn't thinking too far ahead or far enough ahead, and they're chasing revenue. Oh, everybody's asking for this, so I'm going to go create this offer, and because people want it, and I'm going to sell this offer. And then before they know it, right, that becomes the business versus what they really want their business to be, or that becomes a bigger percentage of the business than they were prepared for. But I've seen a lot of people where it's just like, well, somebody hired me to do this and I said yes, and then that led to this person who wanted me to do this and that said yes. And pretty soon I'm 5 miles away from the business I really wanted to have.
So I think that's an interesting example. And I do think that happens some. I also think it happens some that what we have as the vision of what we're capable of when we start the business is not what we realize that we are capable of once we're in the business.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so we designed the business for Gwen 3 years ago, right? And the business becomes the business that would support Gwen 3 years ago. But in that 3 years, all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's not what I want to do, I'm capable of doing, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
What I actually want to do is blah, 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 right? But where there was no way to know it without having gone through the process of building the business for 3 years ago, Gwen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so in that case, I think is also a situation where we don't acknowledge that the work we did actually is what got us to this place, but this place is a place of discontent.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so, in that case, we actually got to discontent by a very healthy way. It wasn't accidental, but we don't see it as intended because we're now in the discontent spot, right?
Right.
And so being able to say, no, it's okay that I went down this path that then got me to this place that realizes I need to be way over here.
Mm-hmm.
And to not call it a failure in any way. And I think that's the challenge, is so often we ultimately then call it a failure.
Mm-hmm.
right? When it wasn't. And that failure thing is hard for us. And so we'll end up, staying in a place of discontent. So I think that's another way that we get there is it's just, this was part of the journey.
Mm-hmm.
We had to do it. It's what happened. And I actually think, and we've already touched base on this quite a bit, is I think the other thing, and it's a version of what I was just talking about, was this was right for this season, but this is right for this new season.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the new season sometimes is about things that we weren't anticipating. We are anticipating that Lily will continue through high school.
Right.
And the girls will go through the thing that they're doing. But what we don't anticipate is, things that we would never dream, want, or wish to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What happens when your husband all of a sudden gets an incredible offer in a completely different place that's a completely different job, and you're all like, oh my gosh, we have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It could still be a positive thing, but it could then put you in a place of like, oh, but I wish I didn't have this business because I can't deal with all of that and what that takes.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. Unexpected situations pop up. Sometimes it really is completely unanticipated for whatever happens. But I think the biggest one is we aren't recognizing our discontent early in the process.
Yes.
We keep thinking, well, it'll be better next week. It'll be better next month. It'll be better, whatever. And to me, this is the piece where we're missing that outside perspective.
Mm-hmm. Well, what it is, I think, and this is the problem, right, is people tend to just swim along until they can't or until they don't want to. And what I think all of us need to be doing to make sure that we are always building the business we really want, that we really are doing something that is sustainable for us, is you have to reassess at every stage.
Yep.
And like for me, the question I will always ask myself is not just, can I do this? Do I want to do this? But is this what I should be doing right now?
Right.
Right? If this is what I want, it's like, does this right now get me to where I want to be in January? Does it get me to where I want to be in June? Will this get me to taking 2 weeks off to go do something with Lily or whatever? Right? But it's that reassessment. And here's what I want, because I want to ask you, like, okay, well, how can somebody do that? But that's not really what I want. What I really want, because what I think is most useful to a listener right now, is not to be given 4 questions to ask to reassess at every stage, but it's really to address the core reason of why don't we do that?
I think, and we talk about this at every quarterly review that we do with our people, and that is, we don't take time to review. And when I use the term review, I'm using it in a very, very broad basis. So what I mean by review is looking back to notice where we're coming. And this is completely the concept behind The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy.
Mm-hmm.
We focus on where we're headed, and we're always focused there. So we're not taking a moment to look back and see where we've come. And part of where we've come includes, is that where we want to, is that the path that we want to continue down?
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's also a celebration piece in there, that we focus on when we're doing the quarterly review, but it's also, is this really where I want to be? Do I want to take time to self-reflect and say, is this really where I want to be going? And not just want to be, but like you said, does it align with where I am now? Is it all of those things that line up? I have been really, really happy with my business model for years now,
Mm-hmm.
but brain went to a different place, and I'm looking at shifting elements of my business model. And it wasn't just like, am I discontented with what I was doing before? The answer is absolutely 0. No.
Mm-hmm.
Loved what I was doing, but I also see this is important. It's something that I am particularly suited to be able to do. It actually aligns with so much of my, my history, decades of my work history. So it really, to me, is about, are we taking time on a regular basis to ask ourselves, to do the reflection piece, or are we having someone who's helping us reflect on it? I think that's the pieces. We often think we can do all of this reflection ourselves, and we can do some amount of it ourselves. But at some point, you usually need someone on the outside to help you with that reflection process.
Right. Well, I'm going to just say it bluntly, is that when you get to a certain level of success, you can talk yourself into anything.
Oh, for sure.
Right? So if you don't want to face the fact that you need to do something different, you just talk yourself out of it. But when you're reflecting with somebody else, provided that person, one, has your best interest at heart, and two, isn't trying to shove you in their own predetermined box, they're going to look at everything. They're going to listen to you, and they're going to say, okay, like, what you're saying and what I'm seeing aren't matching. So, like, which is wrong, or what am I not seeing, right? And they're going to have that conversation with you to help you come to terms with where you potentially have been lying to yourself, what blind spots you may have, or, the curtains you don't want to look behind.
Right. Where are you taking an easy choice because it's an easy choice?
Exactly. So I think those are the main reasons that whole where I got to is not where I really want to be, or how did I get here if I'm not happy here. I think those are the main reasons that we end up there. Now, okay, we don't want to leave people in their pit of despair, right? Nobody keeps listening to podcasts that just leave them feeling miserable. So we got to leave people with some hope here, Gwen.
There's
fake
lots
hope.
of hope here.
Not fake hope, but real hope. So somebody sitting there going, ugh, I'm not happy. I don't like this. Everything you're saying, it sounds fine and all, but I'm still miserable. What are some steps they could take to realign so that they don't have to burn everything down, rebuild from scratch, or, I don't know, like blow up the bridge, whatever the words are? There's euphemisms out there. But what is it that they can do to realign the business with what they really want?
The first piece, and we talk about it a lot because it's really the title of the show, The Business You Really Want. The first piece is to have real conversations with yourself and potentially other, outside folks that meet your criteria, to figure out, what do you really want? Because knowing what you don't want is way easier than knowing what you do want. And so the problem with just focusing on what you don't want, and I'm going away from that, is you potentially are going to a whole lot of other things that you also ultimately don't want. Right? So it's not just about what you don't want. That's a great place to start. I know I don't want this. But really getting clear, what do I want? Where is my focus? What is an alignment? What are those things? And it's the classic example of, this is a simple answer that's really hard to do. Because you really have to have the self-reflection. You have to have the honest conversation, with yourself, maybe with the assistance of somebody else, but to really have that conversation and say, what is that going to take? What do I need to be? The next question from there, once you have any sort of clue, it doesn't have to be the perfect, it does not have to be a picture perfect, every line, everything just as so. But once you start seeing what that is to say, what doesn't align and what does align? Because there's probably elements in your current business that do align. You probably don't need to burn the whole thing down. I mean, if you're going to go from being an IT person to being a knitting instructor, you maybe need to burn the whole thing down.
Right.
It can happen. But most of the time when I hear the stories of people burning down their business, they burn way more down than needed to. They really needed a serious remodel, not a complete burn down. Right? This was not a tear down situation. This was just a remodel situation. but we get so focused on certain elements that we think the only way we can get rid of that is to burn everything down. And it's like, no, most of the time that's not true. It can be true. I'm not going to say it's never true, because that absolutely is also too extreme. But most of the time, figure out what are the things that do work, that are in alignment. It could be your culture. It could be your customer service piece. It could be the business model, but not the service. It could be the service, but not the business model. There's all sorts of pieces, right? So where are the pieces that are aligned? And once we start there, then say, how do we start amplifying those and then figuring out where the gaps are and how we fill the gaps?
Mm-hmm.
Where are those gaps? Once we know where we are aligned, how do we fill them? Sometimes that's new service offerings, but sometimes it's the same services just delivered a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And with different expectations. Instead of doing lots of group program, I'm going to do more one-on-one. Instead of doing lots of one-on-one, I'm going to do more group program, right? Instead of talking about this, I'm going to talk about that. I had a conversation with someone yesterday, and we were talking about if you're used to working with individuals and you just want to start working with corporate, you just need to know how to reframe it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the skill is actually the exact same skill. Like in my case, because I work with executives in business advisory, if I want to frame that into corporate speak, I'm an executive coach.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing anything different, but now I'm working in a different world, right?
Right.
So this would be a case if I was discontented with who my clients were, not true, but but if I was and said, hey, no, I want to actually be working with a different type of person, that's a way to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it really is, where am I aligned? What pieces am I aligned on? And then we start working from there and then building out and letting go of the places where we're not aligned, whatever that might be.
Okay, so what I heard is step one is revisiting the vision and really like getting clear and doing that work. There is some aspect of evaluating the offers. Like you said, sometimes it's instead of one-on-one group, instead of group one-on-one. Sometimes it's just different delivery, right? It's like we go from meeting every week to, we just need to meet twice a month. Shorter, longer. I mean, there's no shortage of ways you can revisit your offers, right? If you sell products, you can revisit how you package those products, how you deliver those products. There could be an aspect of delegation, right? Sometimes it's just about shifting the workload to other people. Sometimes it's about hiring people. Sometimes it's about letting go of the people who got you to where you're at, but they can't get you to the next place you want to be. And that's part of that discontent. And then ultimately, by the end, it's simplification, right? It's looking at all of those things and going, okay, how do I make this feel as easy as possible? Anything missing there? Because in my effort to simplify, I don't want to oversimplify.
Yeah, no, I think the only thing I would add is when we're doing that vision, right, make sure that it's aligning with where you are now and or where you will be soon. Because I think the other thing that I see will happen with discontent sometimes is I design my business for where I think I'm going to be in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us, if we really took, down and wrote down exactly what we thought 10 years from now was going to look like, when we got on 10 years, if we read that, most of us would laugh.
Right.
Because there are things that we would, that we know. We know how old our children should be. We know how long, how old we're supposed to be. There's things that we know, but there's so many things that we don't know. So trying to make that vision too far out, I think, is also one of the challenges of saying, is it aligned with where I am and what I can do right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And going back to what you said when we started the episode, like if you take nothing else away from this episode, it should be that feeling this way doesn't mean you have failed at anything. It's actually, as you said, it's a sign of growth. You're not in the place you used to be. And that's why this
probably
feels
a sign that you haven't failed.
Right. Most likely, yes. And growth is uncomfortable. I mean, it just is.
Always.
So that brings us to the end of this. Thank you for walking us through this, Gwen. This was, I know I took some notes because this one was pretty eye-opening, especially that process of evaluation. And I think that clarity of the limits of what you can do independently all by yourself and where you do need to reach out to some outsider to kind of help you not talk yourself into the things that aren't necessarily true. What I would say, kind of just to sum it up, is that back to you're not a failure, is the business that you've built got you to where you're at right now. The business that you want is probably going to take you further. But in order to get from here to there, you have to give yourself permission to reimagine it, redesign it, make some different decisions to get some different outcomes. But that doesn't mean you have to blow it up. It just doesn't. So if you're feeling right now like, oh, I don't think my business fits my life right now, or this is actually putting words around this feeling I've had that I couldn't really name, you should talk to Gwen. You should talk to us, right? You can have a call with Gwen, and Gwen doesn't do like smarmy, marmy, sleazy sales calls or anything. It's just going to be a conversation to help you identify what's misaligned and help you figure out how to shift toward the business that you actually want. And if you really do need to burn it all down, Gwen's an honest person. She'll tell you that. She will not spare your feelings, but she does it in such a nice way that you won't even know it hurts your feelings. So go to everydayeffectiveness.com/clarity, book that call, and get one step closer to feeling good about what you're doing day in and day out. Thanks for tuning in to The Business You Really Want with Gwen Bortner. I'm Tonya Kubo, reminding you that sustainable success is within reach. Make sure to subscribe to the show and visit thebusinessyoureallyWant.com for more resources. Until next time, keep dreaming big and acting with intention.